that the US has 10 years to counter the rise of China. Why specifically 10 years?
Well, I think it's all a matter of mathematics. And if the Chinese economy keeps growing, right, at 5% a year over 10 years, and I don't have the maths off the top of my head, even if it doesn't overtake, it comes very, very close. And the bigger China gets, the harder it is to stop it.
For years, analysts and experts have been warning that China is on track to overtake the United States as the world's leading superpower. They often say that the US has less than a decade to act before China's rise becomes unstoppable. This may sound dramatic, but is it true? And what would it actually mean for the global balance of power if China surpasses the US? To answer these questions, we need to look deeper than just headlines or predictions. We need to understand the complex mix of China's economic growth, technological advances, military buildup, and its growing influence on the world stage. The real question isn't just when China will catch up, it's what happens after it does. Will the US be able to maintain its dominant position, or will China's strategy reshape the world as we know it? Let's find out in this video. Number 1. Economic growth. Let's look at the economic story because it's impossible to discuss China without numbers. China's GDP has grown at an astonishing pace over the past 4 decades. In 1980, China's economy was smaller than Italy's. Fast forward to 2025, and China has become the world's second largest economy, with a GDP of about $19 trillion in purchasing power parity terms, PPP terms, already larger than the US if you adjust for cost of living. Nominally, the US still leads with a GDP of around $27 trillion, but that gap is closing fast. If current growth trends persist, China averaging 4 to 5% growth while the US grows around 2%, some projections suggest that China could surpass the US in nominal GDP sometime in the 2030s. 10 years is not a magical cutoff, it's a rough estimate of when the global balance could tilt in China's favor. What makes this economic race particularly intense is the sheer scale involved. Each percentage point of growth for China represents hundreds of billions of dollars, money that can be invested in infrastructure, technology, and military capabilities. Beyond GDP, China has been steadily moving up the value chain. In the 1990s, it was primarily a manufacturer of cheap goods. Today, China is producing high-tech machinery, electric vehicles, solar panels, and semiconductors. The shift from low-cost manufacturing to high-tech innovation makes China's economic growth far more sustainable and strategic. Meanwhile, the US economy, while robust, faces challenges like rising national debt, political gridlock, and a slower growth trajectory, which could make it increasingly difficult to maintain its global economic lead without decisive action. Number 2, technology and innovation. GDP is only part of the picture. Technology is where the real race is happening, and where the US feels the pressure most acutely. The United States has long dominated critical sectors like semiconductors, aerospace, and advanced software. Companies like Intel, Nvidia, and Microsoft have set the global standard, while Silicon Valley continues to attract the world's top talent. China, however, is not sitting still. Huawei built the world's first fully commercial 5G network. Baidu, China's equivalent of Google, is leading in AI research and autonomous vehicles. Xiaomi and BYD are not just making smartphones and electric cars, they are creating ecosystems that rival Apple and Tesla. Consider semiconductors, for instance, the tiny chips that power everything from smartphones to fighter jets. The US still dominates cutting-edge chip design, but China is making massive investments to catch up. The government has poured billions into domestic chip manufacturing, incentivized talent, and even restricted foreign chip sales to accelerate its independence. Experts say that within 5 to 15 years, China could be self-sufficient in producing chips for most of its needs, dramatically reducing one of the US's major levers of global influence. The technology race isn't limited to semiconductors. China is aggressively pursuing breakthroughs in artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and biotechnology. Take AI for instance. Baidu and Tencent are now producing research that rivals the best in the US, and China's vast population provides enormous data sets that give AI systems an edge in real-world applications. In electric vehicles, BYD has become the world's largest EV manufacturer, outpacing Tesla in annual production. These developments signal that China is not just catching up, it is creating the potential to leapfrog the US in several strategic industries. Number 3. Military power. Military power is another arena where the 10-year narrative comes alive. The US Navy, Air Force, and advanced cyber capabilities remain unmatched on a global scale. Yet in Asia, China's military modernization is rapidly closing the gap. Its navy is now the largest in the world by number of ships, its missile arsenal is capable of targeting US bases across the Pacific, and its cyber and space capabilities continue to grow. Analysts project that by the early 2030s, China could rival US military influence in the Asia-Pacific, making a traditional military dominance strategy less effective for the US. What makes this particularly concerning for Washington is the combination of technology and strategy. China is not only increasing the size of its military, but also improving its quality. Hypersonic missiles, advanced drones, and anti-satellite weapons are all part of its modernization plan. Moreover, China has been actively using gray zone tactics, small-scale strategic maneuvers in areas like the South China Sea, to test U.S. responses without triggering outright conflict. This approach allows Beijing to steadily expand its influence while minimizing risk, a strategy that could pay dividends if the US does not respond effectively. At the same time, the US faces internal military challenges. Maintaining global bases and projecting power across multiple regions is expensive and politically contentious. Rising defense costs, recruitment challenges, and debates over the role of the military in domestic politics complicate America's ability to respond decisively to China's rise. The 10-year frame in this sense is also about timing. If the US wants to prevent China from establishing uncontested regional dominance, it must act strategically and sooner rather than later. And finally, number 4, geopolitical leverage. Geopolitically, China is playing a long game. Through initiatives like the Belt and Road, it has invested trillions in infrastructure projects across Asia, Africa, and even Europe. Countries from Pakistan to Kenya are now tied to China through trade and debt, giving Beijing significant leverage in international negotiations. Meanwhile, the US still relies on old alliances, such as NATO and security arrangements in East Asia, but these alliances are increasingly tested by internal political divisions and questions about America's long-term commitment. Some might argue that demographics favor the US. China is facing a rapidly aging population, declining birth rates, and shrinking workforce, while the US maintains a relatively younger population boosted by immigration. These demographic trends could slow China's growth, making the 10-year window feel less urgent. Yet, China's government is actively trying to counteract this, relaxing family planning policies, investing in robotics, and reshaping its economy to focus more on high-value sectors rather than sheer manufacturing output. China is also extending its influence in global institutions, from the United Nations to the World Bank, gradually reshaping international rules to its advantage. By the time the 10-year mark arrives, Beijing hopes to be far enough ahead economically, technologically, and geopolitically that catching up becomes almost impossible without risking global conflict. There's a lesson here beyond geopolitics. Power shifts are rarely sudden. China isn't going to wake up tomorrow and suddenly become the world's only superpower. But the combination of rapid economic growth, technological breakthroughs, strategic investments, and long-term planning has set the stage for a significant shift. 10 years is less a hard deadline and more a signal of when the international system may look noticeably different. In the end, the tension between these two giants is not just an economic or military contest. It's a clash of strategies, visions, and timelines. And while analysts love to put exact numbers on this race, the real takeaway is that the world is entering a critical phase where choices, policies, and innovation will determine which nation truly defines the 21st century. The 10-year clock may tick relentlessly, but how the US responds or fails to respond will echo far beyond those years. So what do you think? Do you agree with our video? Tell us what you think by leaving your comments below. And if you like what you watched, make sure to hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe to our channel to show your support.